I can feel the hate vibes that are going to get sent at me for a few books that are on this list. Hey, what's up you guys? My name is Sam and thanks for checking out my video. Make sure to hit the subscribe button down below and give it a thumbs up. Today, I want to bring up some controversy. I want to discuss the books that I DNF'd this year. Now, I'm not just talking about books that I read and disliked. There are some of those books, and that's a video for another day. But there are books that I got like over 50% of the way through and just went, no, I can't handle this. My brain is done with this. I'm done. And just dropped it. I want to preface this whole video with, I hope you love the books that you read, and if one of your books is on here, it is of no offense to you. Books are subjective. They're liked by different people at different points in their lives for different reasons, and for whatever reason, some of these books, well, all of these books here just did not jive with me. So going through the books chronologically in the order that I DNF'd them throughout the year, the first book that I DNF'd is Vasa in the Night by Sarah Porter. This book, it wasn't bad, it's just very weird. It's not a particularly big book either, so I think I'm going to try and give it one more go. It's going to be one of those books that I think I have to read when I'm in the mood for like a Neil Gaiman book. I want a weird book with like confusion but really good writing. I'm going to give it one more go. The second book that I DNF'd this year was The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton, and I've actually unhauled this book, as I had for most of these books. I love historical fiction. I love it when it's set in, like, Denmark, especially, and, like, Europe. These are all, like, big foreign places for me. But this book, I think I got about 40% of the way through before calling it quits. I started out reading it physically, and then I switched to get help from an audiobook, and I still had to bail. I was just immensely bored and didn't get the entire point of the book. Maybe it was clarified near the end, but I was just extremely underwhelmed by this book. The third book that I DNF'd this year was Curio by Evangeline, I think it is, Denmark. I think I got about 20% of the way in and just knew this book was not going to work for me. The cover was really cool, and that was what honestly intrigued me to begin with, but there's no context given. The world is really weird. It's not particularly well written, and I just felt that I wasn't getting into it the way that I knew I was supposed to be, and it was just probably going to be a waste of my time or put me in a reading slump if I pushed through it. The fourth book that I DNF'd this year was Ever the Hunted by Erin Summerhill. I really wanted to like this book. I got it in a book box. It has a really pretty cover, but oh my god. I have had like private message discussions with people, and we rant about how much we disliked this book. It was tropey, but not in a good way. It wasn't really particularly well written, I don't think, and I wanted to slap the main character. She was kind of infuriating, and a lot of us were very surprised that in 2017 a character would be written like this. She wasn't a particularly strong female, she wasn't particularly likable. Maybe it changed, but I got about 50% of the way through and just was too angry, honestly, to push through. Book 5 that I DNF'd, and I think this was in February, was The Edge of Everything by Jeff Giles. This was a total cover interest one, and I read the summary and remember being like, oh, that would be cool. Yeah, I'll give it a go. And I got to page 80 before I literally abandoned the book. I was at a hotel in Edmonton and decided not to take it back with me. I rolled my eyes so many times in the first few pages and chapters, and not in a good way, not in a funny way. It just seemed the characters were unrealistic, the dialogue was unrealistic. It was set in Canada, and there were things that were said that made me go, that's not cold weather in Canada kind of situation. So it just wasn't for me. This one is, I'm definitely going to get some hate from some people for this one. Three Dark Crowns by Kendra Blake. I've just come to realize, I think, that she's just not an author that I would really particularly enjoy the writing of in general. This is a book that was hyped up to me to be a little bit of political intrigue and backstabbing and competition. It came off more to me as a book with three girls and romance who happened to be kind of competing for queendom. It was boring for most of it. I didn't like any of the characters. Again, I kind of wanted to slap some people. And then people kept telling me, oh, push through to the end, so I skimmed the last few chapters, which is why I classify it technically as a DNF, and then read, I think, the last, 3 or 4 chapters, and didn't feel like it was worth it. So I'm not going to continue with that series. I hope, if you like it, that One Dark Throne, I think, that came out is good, but this was not for me. I don't feel that it's particularly good writing or publishing or editing or something. If your suggestion is get past the first book, I know it's not great. The second book is better. To me, that they should have been combined or it should have been written differently or something. Kind of along those same lines, And I Darken by Kirsten White. I wanted to love this book. My undergraduate studies focused on Russian history before the Soviet Union and Germanic history before and during the World Wars. This is a retelling of Vlad the Impaler, I believe it is. I loved the first few chapters. The main character seemed like almost a sociopath to me, and I was intrigued. Then she hit puberty in the book, and it got tropey real fast. And that was not why I picked that book up. I picked it up for being gory and for that sociopathic kid, and not a tropey girl who falls in love with her best friend that she's known all her life kind of thing. So I bailed. Another one where people told me the second book was better, but I'm not going to read 300 to 400 pages of a book that I'm not enjoying in order to read the sequel, which gets better. Just write it or edit it or compile it differently. Rebel Spring by Morgan Rhodes. I'm actually not planning on unhauling this one quite yet. I didn't dislike it. I was definitely just not feeling it. There's a lot of romance in this book particularly. Falling Kingdoms has some romance, but the ending is very bloody. There's a lot of violence, and I liked that, and I was expecting that to continue, but it kind of starts down and builds its way up. I got about 60% of the way in and just realized it's not what I was ready to read at the time. So I'm going to try, I think, and marathon this series once the last book of it comes out, because I really want to give it a go, and she is a Canadian author. This was a controversial book, I feel like, until it came out, and then the controversy about it kind of died down. Carve the Mark by Veronica Roth. I really wasn't planning on picking this book up. I'm not a big sci-fi-y person for the most part, and it sounded kind of like a science fiction opera. But I ended up getting it in a book box. So I gave it a go. I got to page 100. I generally have a rule of at least give a book 50 pages, and I went beyond that. I didn't really read enough of it to deal with any of like the controversies around it. I just didn't understand what was going on. And it's a thick book, and I don't want to be confused for that whole time. I know someone told me that there's, on her YouTube channel, I think it was, some explanations on either how to pronounce words or who certain people are. But I feel like if you have to direct people to another medium format in order to explain what's going on in the book, that maybe that stuff should have been included in the book to begin with. Now this is a series that I feel like is a total cover betrayal, which, again, is a video for another time. But the Firebird Trilogy by Claudia Gray. I was not able to get through the first book, 1,000 Pieces of You, despite the covers being gorgeous. This book is so romance heavy and so deceptively summarized on the back that it actually kind of made me angry. I came away with the concept of there's some murder mystery and some time travel with a little bit of romance, because it is YA. No. It is a book where there is lots of romance that didn't seem particularly healthy to me in the parts that I did read, that also happened to be doing time traveling. So I didn't love it, and I've heard pretty similar feelings about it from lots of other people, so. The Last Ever After by Soman Chaney, I think is how you pronounce it. I really wish this series had been left as a standalone. I enjoyed the first book. I thought it had some good morals and lessons for a middle grade. The second book was okay. I finished it, but wasn't particularly excited about it. I felt maybe the third book would redeem it, because a lot of series have a first book, second book, and a third book. Unfortunately, the third book was just unbearable. It seemed like the characters were totally different people. The lessons that had already been tackled in the previous books kept coming up, and not in an evaluative way. It almost seemed like they were trying to justify it to me. So I just wasn't particularly interested in it, and I won't be continuing the series. Nemesis by Brandon Reich? I'm not sure how to pronounce it. This is kind of on me because I didn't really totally read any reviews, and I didn't super read the summary thoroughly. I saw the cover and the blurb on the front of it of, he killed me again. These books are particularly interesting and kind of dangerous, I feel like, for authors. If you are going to write a book where you have to repeat the same events, you need to write it really well, and it needs to be interesting. I just did not pick that up from this book, and I gave up pretty early on and gave my copy away. The second book by Claudia Gray is To Five of Stars. This book I didn't hate as much as 1,000 Pieces of You. It has a pretty cover though. I just feel like she relies very heavily on romance, and I was not enjoying the romance element of it. I feel like that's just super recycled content, and I want something fresh and new. It's also the part I read was like a science fiction opera almost, and as soon as you do that, I am automatically going to compare your book to Illuminae. It was not there quality-wise in the writing or the story, so I ended up bailing. This is another book that I think I am going to give another shot. Given to the Sea by Mindy McGinnis. She is an instant buy author for me, and I am aware that I like her writing. She just takes on serious topics and puts them in very weird settings, almost to like detach us so that we can see the problem and then be like, oh wait, that happens in our society. This book was just very weird. I got about 40% of the way in and then just decided to walk away. It's another one, kind of like Vasa in the Night, where I'm going to have to be in the mood for a weird, almost Neil Gaiman-like book, and try and give this one a go. This is a weird one, called Life in Outer Space by Melissa Cale, I believe it is. I got about 50% of the way through. I ended up picking it up originally because it fit the qualities I needed for a book in a specific reading challenge. I am not a fan of contemporary for the most part, as we've discussed, so I thought I was just going to try and reach outside my wheelhouse with this one. I actually really enjoyed this book. There's a lot of pop culture references. The characters are likable. It's got an interesting setting for me. I just don't like contemporaries, and I think I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. If you like pop culture, if you like contemporaries, I would definitely give this one a go. It really made me think of like Ready Player One, like the attitude and the pop cultureness of it, just taken and put in a contemporary place. I think it was set in Australia. So I would actually really recommend this one. Passage by Justin Cronin is an interesting one. It's another one that I actually thought it was an interesting book. It is a thick book though, and it is a long game book, I got the impression. I think it's being made into a TV show, so I might try the TV show. I am just a reader who, I like when there's like things thought out in advance, but I don't want to have to read 600 pages to get from point A to point B and then continue reading on. That's just, I don't know, it's just a lot of work, and like I feel like I get bored or like lose my attention by that point. So I ended up DNFing it, but if you like, there's like a government conspiracy zombie medical kind of thing. So if you like that, I would suggest picking it up if you haven't already. The next book that I DNF'd is Burning Glass by Catherine Purdy. I will be unhauling this book. I mean, I don't know if I had high hopes for it. I was just expecting it to be a decent book. But this book brought up and had some really problematic content that wasn't evaluated, and I think I got about 60% in and finally just got fed up with it. I mean, it begins with self-harm, and that is never analyzed. It just says, well, they do this, and that's the end of the discussion. It's never really brought up again. And then there's an extremely unhealthy kind of romantic relationship triangle going on. I didn't like how it was written. I didn't like the characters in it. And one of them is just abusive, and it's just accepted and justified. There's no analysis done of it. And that put me off the book right away. So I won't be continuing with this book or the series. Another contemporary book that I picked up to fit into a reading challenge was One of Us Was Lying by Karen McManus, something like that. I heard really good things about this book, so I don't know if I like read a different book than other people, and a bunch of people gave it 5 stars, and then my friends read it, and they had problems with it as well. I got to about chapter 7, and then asked my friend, did this person do it? She replied, yep, and explained the ending, and I went, yeah, I would be pissed off if I finished that book. And that was the ending. So I ended up DNFing it. I didn't like any of the characters. I found it pretty predictable, and I originally really went for it because it was described as the Breakfast Club. The only correlation that I could see to the Breakfast Club was that it starts off with detention, and that's it. Like, that's it. The second to last book that I DNF'd was Seriously Wicked by Tina Connolly. This was a cover buy off of Book Outlet. I think it was only about $2, so I'm not too disappointed in it. It's not even a big book. I think it just has this weird structure where it's both trying to be middle grade and YA, but it is both at the same time too juvenile and too adult. I feel like the writing was trying to make it whimsical, but I didn't like it. The pace was off. Wasn't really super crazy about any of the characters. And I don't feel like there should have had to have been context given to this, but I feel like with the story written the way it was, it is missing context kind of situation. It's a trilogy, and if it's a middle grade book that middle grade kids are enjoying, that's great. It just definitely was not for me, and I won't be continuing with this book or the series. And hopefully the last book that I have DNF'd in 2018, in 2017 is The 100 Lies of Lizzy Lovett by Chelsea Sidoti, I think it is. I picked this book up, once again, it's a contemporary out of my wheelhouse, but it was the book of the month for the Big Read by Overdrive. I ended up putting this book down as soon as the following thing was said. You're not like other people. No, I'm not. If you're going to be that stereotypical, tropey, take that kind of dialogue, you need to make the story original or the characters likable or give me a reason to keep going. No, the guy that said it was a misunderstood older guy who's being accused of murder, basically, and the other girl is like a mysterious, quirky, out-of-this-wheelhouse kind of girl who I honestly kind of wanted to, once again, slap a couple times in the book. So those are all of the books that I DNF'd in 2017. What books did you DNF? Let me know in the box down below. Make sure to click the subscribe button and give me a thumbs up on the video. I will also link all my social media stuff in the description box down below. If you follow me, I will follow you back.